On June the 30th, 1999, the body of a man was found in a field, and with him, one of the greatest internet mysteries was born. This is the story of Ricky McCormick, an illiterate homeless man that carried a cipher on his corpse that even the top government agencies haven't been able to crack in 26 years. Today, we have another murder mystery, full of conspiracies and all the insanity that the greatest movies are made of. Only this one happened in real life, and unlike the rest of the world, I've got a few theories that not everyone's gonna agree with. Let's get into it. It all starts in St. Charles County, Missouri, when a woman driving past a farm spotted what appeared to be a human body in the bushes next to a dirt road. The man in the field was Ricky McCormick, aged 41. He hadn't been dead long, somewhere in the ballpark of 3 to 5 days. It was hard to tell because the heat of the season had already set decomposition pretty far along. It took them a while to find any injuries under all that bloating, but they eventually located a slash on Ricky's neck that could explain how he died. There was no blood pool around the body, so he was brought here after he died. He had nothing in his pockets to identify him other than 2 pages of random scribbles that looked like gibberish. These 2 pages, which would later become the central point of this investigation, were put aside at first. This was almost certainly a body dump, though. The cornfield was miles away from any bus stop or residential houses, and even farther away from where we later knew he worked and lived. He did not end up here by walking, that's for sure. Someone discarded the body there after slashing Ricky's throat. Luckily, he had a criminal record, so he was identified just hours after the body's discovery. Ricky had dropped out of high school, not that he'd been doing well enough to pass any grade before that anyway. His IQ was somewhere along the 70 to 75 range, putting him right at the cusp of being intellectually disabled. His reading and writing skills were so low that he was legally considered illiterate. How he got as far as high school is a miracle in and of itself. He bounced around from job to job and spent his time getting high and making babies with different mothers that he had no interest in ever taking responsibility for. He got sent to jail for 11 months for impregnating a girl that was underage. The relationship was consensual, but given that the girl was 14 and Ricky 34 at the time that the incident occurred, I'd say that sentence was much too lenient. Other than that, Ricky wasn't exactly a criminal that could be considered anything complex. He smoked a lot of weed and kind of floated through life without a plan, any permanent job, home, or relationship. Honestly, he was creepy with young girls and had way too many children, so he definitely wasn't a nice guy. But this was not the kind of individual that had the brains or the skills to get himself into any level of serious organized crime. On June the 25th, 5 days before the discovery of his body, he'd been to the emergency room. Ricky had chronic lung and heart issues, so this trip wasn't out of the ordinary. Since he was a child, he'd have to go in when he suffered from shortness of breath, dizziness, or even fainting spells. He was declared fit to leave, and it's certain that he was still doing well 2 days later when he was seen by a witness and an acquaintance who just saw him in passing. The timeline led police to believe he died on the 27th at the very least, 3 days before he was found. Many people have an issue with Ricky only being dead for 3 days, given the extreme decomposition that his remains were in. I mean, there was already skin slippage, and some of his fingertips had sliced off the bone completely. But he was out in the open sun, in a moist cornfield, completely exposed to the Missouri June heat. I can absolutely believe that 3 days is enough to do that to a body. He'd have bloated to twice his body size in just 36 hours in that kind of heat. After all the baby mamas and what little friends he had were cleared, police turned back to those 2 pieces of folded paper that were found in his pockets. To the untrained eye, it looked like nonsense, just random letters and dashes and, well, complete nonsense. But any code cracker could see that this was a cipher, and a damn complex one at that. Now, I'm not going to expand on the full background of ciphers in this video. Like I said, it's complex enough to give me a headache. But to make a long story short, the cipher found was considered to be the real deal, an actual coded message and not a simple one either. because of its structured repetition and internal logic. The FBI's cryptanalysis and racketeering records unit noted that it contained dozens of lines of letters, numbers, and symbols arranged in sequences that repeated in consistent ways, like how certain character clusters appeared multiple times, suggesting structured grammatical rules rather than random scribbles. The spacing and formatting also resembled coded writing systems, with line breaks and groupings that were intentional. The repetition of the letters MCBE were clearly the focal point of the message, but what that meant was anyone's guess. I mentioned the CCRU, the FBI Codecracker Department, so you can probably guess that the Missouri police had handed off the case to them before Ricky was even buried. They were in over their heads. They had no suspects, no evidence, no motive, and a cipher that they couldn't even begin to solve. While the FBI were left scratching their heads over the pages, the newspapers went ahead and published a whole lot of false information that we need to clear up right now. According to them, Ricky was a secret savant that created his own ciphers and codes since childhood. Ricky's infuriated family came forward to put the rumors to rest. According to them, he couldn't spell at all. He could only sign his own name, could not do math, and could not read. He never created codes and ciphers as a child or an adult. He just didn't know how. Now, I don't have much patience for false reporting, but in this case, even though the information was completely false, the storyline of an intellectually disabled man who was illiterate being some kind of secret genius was exactly what Ricky needed to send this case into the stratosphere. If it weren't for that fantastical reporting, Ricky McCormick's murder would have disappeared into a filing room like so many other demographics that just get forgotten about. To complicate matters, police had their hands full trying to piece together Ricky's life to get in touch with anyone he knew. And here's where things get complicated. At the time of his death, Ricky worked at a gas station for the Hamden family. The Hamdens were a bunch of hooligans that all belonged in jail. Of the three brothers that had immigrated to the country in their 20s, all of them had violent crimes on their records. One brother, Baha Hamden, had shot at his own brother, beaten a man nearly to death, and when he attacked another man with a hammer for sitting on the sidewalk in front of his house, that man ended up dead 2 weeks before the trial was set to take place. I can go on and on about the other brothers, but Baha is the most curious when it comes to Ricky's murder. You see, Baha was connected to gangs and he was involved in drugs, specifically with a man named Gregory Lamar Knox, a big-time crack cocaine and marijuana dealer that was suspected of no less than 4 murders. A serious bad guy. According to Ricky's girlfriend at the time, Ricky was transporting marijuana on Baha's command, usually from Missouri to Florida by hopping buses. But those shipments were most likely coming from this Knox fellow. Again, Ricky was no kingpin, far from it. And Baha wasn't much of a figure in the underworld, just a sketchy dude with a taste for violence who took advantage of Ricky's intellectual disabilities and his rather naive nature. But Knox, he was a different creature altogether. In other words, Ricky was being used as a mule in an industry that he definitely didn't have the sense to navigate at all. The week leading up to his murder, his girlfriend said that he was afraid. Of what? She didn't know. Ricky wouldn't say anything other than that he was heading to Florida for Baha again. She thought that his trip to the hospital was not due to his heart and lung condition, but instead that it might have been a panic attack. He was that nervous. Actually, he was so nervous that when he was discharged that afternoon, Ricky sat in the ER waiting room for hours. The nurses, realizing that he was physically well, but that he might be mentally struggling, brought him a blanket and allowed him to hang around until midnight. Ricky then walked to the gas station where he worked, as confirmed by an employee, and soon after that, Ricky was killed and dumped in the cornfield. Now let's keep a pin in all of that information and take a look at the cipher again. Every single expert agrees that the repetition and the format suggest that this is a legit cipher and not a make-believe note written by an illiterate man just for kicks. They obviously think that there's enough here to warrant decades of resources put into deciphering it. The FBI, who would normally never openly admit that they're stumped, have released the full contents and openly asked the public for help in deciphering it. But was it even Ricky's writing? Most people think so, because it seems messy, but not me. To me, there's a handwriting pattern visible. Whoever wrote this has been writing comfortably for years. The way they made their E's and R's are uniform, never changing. This person didn't struggle with forming letters, while Ricky definitely would have. Now, if this was a form of shorthand invented to keep track of dates, locations, drop-off times, and such, well, that makes total sense why Ricky would have had the papers on him. Make the drug delivery along with the notes, and the receiver could read the note that told him where to take the shipment and to whom it needed to go. If this is a form of self-invented shorthand, then only those that made it would know what the letters mean and how they fit together. We wouldn't be able to decipher it because it's all probably abbreviated letters, which would be all a drug mule or delivery person would need to read it. Ricky didn't need to be able to write or read it, he just needed to deliver the paper itself. He was an insignificant middleman with a larger operation that required him to know as little as possible. A big fish like Knox had dozens of guys like Ricky running around doing the dirty work for him. It's not hard to come to that conclusion. Besides, organized crime is full of handwritten notes made in shorthand, just like the ones found on Ricky, to this very day. It leaves no elaborate electronic trail. It can be burned to ashes after a sale is completed, and no one outside of the circle could understand the writing unless they were told what each set of letters mean. Could Ricky have actually had a normal to above average intelligence, but the system misdiagnosed him due to a severe case of dyslexia, and as a result, he simply taught himself a form of shorthand to keep track of his illegal deliveries or his extensive medical needs? Sure, many believe that to be true. Personally, I'm not one of these people. At 41 years old, just about everyone who knew Ricky confirmed that he was, I hate to say it so bluntly, but he wasn't very intelligent. He often slipped out of reality and stared into space. He was slow to answer questions and perform tasks, and he had an attention span so short that it was incredibly difficult for him to perform even the simplest sequence of tasks. He just didn't have it in him to create a cipher that requires an advanced set of skills in language and at least an above-average understanding of rudimentary logic in mathematics. I think Ricky got cold feet, and the big boss Knox, or trigger-happy Baha Hamden, killed him for trying to back out. They probably wanted him to move some serious drugs like crack or heroin, as they were known to do, and like everyone else they came into contact with, Ricky was met with a swift end when he became an inconvenience to them. They just forgot to take their notes out of his pocket. Notes that were probably invented by the drug smuggling network that Knox ran for many years. Hell, the more elaborate theories run along the lines of Ricky being a genius that cracked codes for the government and secret operations happening on the back streets of Missouri. But let's face it, we're all overthinking this whole thing. Ricky was just the collateral damage that comes with large-scale drug operations that prey on members of society that are weak, vulnerable, and those that probably didn't grow up with enough support and structure to ask too many questions and not enough people around them who cared enough to keep an eye on Ricky. Ricky wasn't the nicest guy, so don't think that I'm completely sympathetic toward him. After all, he did impregnate a 14-year-old girl. But I wouldn't exactly say that he was in the best position to make any informed decisions either. To me, this isn't the spy-level mystery that the internet wants it to be, and whether it was Knox, Hamden, or someone else acting on their orders, well, that's a dead end too. Both of them are long dead, and the drug world isn't exactly known for its long shelf life. Even now, the FBI considers Ricky McCormick's cipher as much of a mystery as the Zodiac Killer's unresolved ciphers. I think the answers died with Knox and Baha Hamden. Ricky McCormick and his cipher make for great conspiracy fuel, sure, but he most likely was a very small fish in a very big pond of criminal fish that ran the show. Maybe I'm wrong, and there's another angle here we're all missing. The FBI has put in an enormous amount of resources into this, and that is suspicious. I have a feeling my viewers will agree that that amount of time and effort put in by a government agency warrants more suspicion from us. Or maybe my tinfoil hat just needs to chill out and allow imagination to fuel this case, like the internet has done for 2 decades now. What do you think? You all know by now that our team takes every suggestion, every opinion, and every ounce of feedback to heart. So leave your thoughts down below. And on a final note, thank you for letting our channel reach 200 subscribers. Here's to the next 200 and to many more cases that leave us scratching our heads. See you in the next one, people. Cheers.